Attending our July 20th, 2016 Planning Board meeting. Tonight we have a special guest to start our meeting, Mr. Ray Sanchez, Superintendent of Schools. Mr. Sanchez, would you please come to the front to address the board?
All right, so good evening, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you. I've spoken to both our town supervisor and village mayor to offer the opportunity, or offer the opportunity for me to come and speak to you about enrollment and where we are as a school district. I know that there's a lot of different perspectives that may be out there, and we thought I can come and share factual information as it relates to the schools and where we are currently. Again, as it relates to enrollment and our facilities as a whole. So what I did is I prepared for you a few slides with some clear information, and certainly I'll stay to answer any questions that you may have. And I apologize to the community, but I'll certainly make copies for you at a later time, or I can post it on the district website if you wish to see it. So the first slide, just below the intro, is titled Demographics, and just give you a sense of how our district has changed. You'll note that 2003, 2004, there were about 4,004 students. And over that time, which is about 11 years, we've seen an increase of about 900 students. So we're currently at 4,949 students. So we're nearing 5,000 as a whole. Again, with various needs, various needs and coming in at various grade levels as well. If you turn the page, you'll note from our demographer, and we do have a demographer that reports to us every year. We feel it's important to have current information. She's from Eastern Suffolk BOCES. It's a service that's provided. And annually they come to the Board of Education to provide an updated report as it relates to enrollment, and this is extracted from that said report. You'll note as we project out from in future years, you'll see the line that notes 2015. And as we move forward, you'll see that we anticipate a continued increase in the number of students that we have in our school district, peaking at about 5,087. That's a gain of about 358 students just in K to grade 12. And that's a measure that we continue to very closely monitor to see if there's any increases and decreases as relate, and more so the grade level that's really going to tell us that is our kindergarten enrollment as they enter. That's actually the hardest grade level to project based on our demographer again. Just below that you'll see and actually I just want to stress too, as you look at 2005, 2025, which is that first chart that you note there, it's not a bubble that we're noticing. This is a leveling off, if anything else. So, sometimes there are districts that we just got to get past this bubble, and then in turn we'll start seeing a significant decrease in our enrollment. As per the most recent data, or the most updated data, what we're going to see is a continued increase and then a leveling off as time goes on. Yes?
Question on that.
Sure.
Is that based on existing housing buildings that are in town and village of Austin?
Yeah, so I should have gone back and kind of explained a little bit about how the demographer goes about creating her report. She does reach out to to look at what developments are sort of in the queue, to look at how many we can anticipate as it relates to certain developments. This particular report, if you give me a moment. Just looked at this a minute ago. Looked at include proposed housing and discuss proposed housing at Harbor Square, which obviously is to be completed, if not completed. Hidden Cove is another one. Hunter James, which is Hudson Step, and Park Knolls, which is about 53 rental apartments. That's the information that was provided to our developer before.
So that includes those 4 properties and the amount of students.
that we anticipate from those said properties.
Based on what,
And to be honest with you,
based on what the developers say.
No, based on her formula. She has a formula that, truthfully, I'm not sure how it's calculated in terms of like the algorithm behind it, but it's a well-known algorithm as it relates to demographers, and relatively accurate. She's been very close to about 90% accuracy as it relates to our report. So we put a lot of value in the information that's provided to us, and actually it's a key piece of information as it relates to my presentation to the board and to our community as it relates to a number of sections and teachers that we may need per grade level based on her report and what we've seen in trends. Does that help? Okay. And then just below the aggregate, you'll see a breakdown of the K-5, 9-12, and 6-8 demographics, and you can see that will continue. Probably the greatest increases over time as we move to 2023 is our high school. We'll see by 2018 our peak for our middle school, and roughly around the same time for our elementary schools, while the high school continues to increase. And the important piece to this is that the students are in our system. So these aren't students that are just, we're guessing will be here. These are now they're just moving and shifting through the system, and eventually will be all at the high school level. So if you turn the page, this is just our now, meaning that this is what we are currently experiencing. I'll explain what the photo on the top represents, and then just some things to consider as we look at our schools and our needs overall. So what you'll notice there is a child individually working with a reading teacher. What you can't really see is that instruction is actually taking place on a stage. So we've had to close our curtains and actually use that as a reading classroom for our students. So you've got to keep in mind that as lunch periods and other things are going on behind the other side of the curtain, students are working with teachers on stage, which obviously our goal would be to have adequate classrooms for our teachers to work in at all times. But I got to credit our teachers for their hard work and their dedication, because I really believe that they do everything that they can to make sure the students don't feel it, and that they feel like this is, they focus on the instruction. Yet we realize too that there's better places for learning than the stage of an elementary school. So things to consider, as we go through. Sometimes the question comes up, oftentimes the discussion is, how many classrooms do you need? And certainly there is a need for additional classrooms within our district. If you go back to one of the reports I shared with the board, I did a comprehensive view of all our facility needs, including classrooms. And I looked at security, a number of other variables, and I gave the district or the Board of Education a comprehensive list of items that we need to consider and budget for as we project and go forward. And there is a need for classroom space. Other elements that sometimes are forgotten but need to be considered, with more students, oftentimes comes more staff. And the parking that we currently exist for our schools was made and developed for a certain number of teachers, for a certain number of students attending our schools. And so that's also seeing a crunch as well. Our cafeterias, it's taking our students much longer to get through the cafeteria because the serveries were built and created for much less students than we have currently. Just to give you a sense, it's shared with me by Claremont principal that it takes about students 20 minutes to get through the line at Claremont School, keeping in mind that they have 40 minutes to eat lunch, so it's a very quick lunch so that they have time to get out for recess. Special areas and related services, that comes down to the need for reading teachers and ESL teachers and speech teachers to have adequate space for learning, and that also needs to be considered as it relates to enrollment and space needs in the school district. But I just wanted to keep those in mind because those are areas that we need to look at and we are looking at as it relates to the number of students that are entering our school. And then the final page is titled The Summary. This actually comes right from the demographer's presentation. And you'll see the facts that she's noted, or at least her summary statements. And I'll just read to you if it's okay. Gains in the district enrollment are projected to continue during the next 5 years, followed by relative stability during the latter half of the period. Elementary grades will peak at 2017, followed by a small decrease in 2016. I would put an asterisk there because that's still being very carefully monitored. Increase will be seen at the middle school for 2018, followed by stability in 2024. And the high school grades will see gains through 2023. And then just going down to the bottom, there are a number of local building projects before the planning board. These should also be monitored to determine the possible impact on our school district. And that's truthfully why I appreciate the partnership that we have and the communication that I have personally with our town and our village, because they continue to update me on what's happening and some of the things that are before you and that you're considering. So that's a very short presentation, but I hope it provides you a little bit of context to what our school district is, our current status, and what we project going forward. And then I'll just pause to answer any questions that you may have.
So every year there's a school budget, and mostly it's to pay salaries and things like that, and teachers, and the upkeep of the school.
Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. So every year there's a school budget, which whether it gets passed or not, is based on the needs to pay salaries, rent, heating, all those things of the schools. How much of the budget is used to pay for additional classrooms, or is that even, I saw at the high school you expanded a little bit, but I don't know if it was for classrooms.
Yeah, so I should speak to the high school project and some of the middle school. The community we're very fortunate that our community supported on it to help support some of the work, the interior work at our middle school to address space needs. And still, there's needs within the context of our middle school. And at the high school, we were able to add additional space. You may have noticed an additional science wing, which added a number of classrooms. And that was built over our existing, well, at the time, the existing science wing. So there are components like that. The last budget did include the use of a fund balance reserve. That was money that we had set aside for any spikes that we anticipated in the bond, but because of interest rates being better than we anticipated, and also the numbers that we were getting as it relates to the construction, we didn't necessarily need to use that, so our community supported through the budget vote for us to reallocate that and use that towards capital. So we are using a portion of that towards additional space, particularly at Park School right now.
So with the additional students that you anticipate with these projects, and I think you also missed River Knoll on this, which...
That's a zone tax change, so I don't know if the superintendent, I know you've spoken, you've had conversations
Can I
with
hear
the
you?
applicant. You've had conversations with the applicant regarding River Knoll. That's a zone tax change, so I don't know if that's been included in your demographic study
No,
at this
but we
point.
did talk to in conversations with the developer, we did reach out to our demographer to look at our numbers versus what the developer was proposing or anticipating as it relates to enrollment, and discuss what those might be.
So how many classrooms would you say you're short in this coming year, 2016, 2017?
Yeah, I wouldn't say short, I would say that we're running at capacity, if not, in some cases, a little bit above capacity.
So if you have, let's say, 24 students, you'd maybe go and increase it to 26 or 28 or 30 or something like
Well, I mean,
that?
what you'll start to notice, and the choices we'll have to make, is if spaces does not exist, then we'll have no other choice but to increase in class size. If that is the value of the community and the parents and everyone else, I may not have that choice in the future because you have no other place to put the students. So what you do is you start filling up the classes that exist with more students than perhaps you may have wanted to have in those classes. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Now,
I do want to just add too, there's also renovations taking place at Roosevelt School. Those are mostly in-house projects that are being done to look at trying to create additional classrooms. We've moved central office out, so there are about 6 new classrooms that were added to the top level, the 3rd floor of Roosevelt School, and we also expanded the size of the classrooms because they were about 650 square feet. It's much smaller than you would anticipate, particularly for 5th grade students, so we've looked to expand those classrooms, and we've gained space there. Now we're moving down to the 2nd floor And we also anticipate doing some work on the cafeteria to help with the service and getting students through the lunch periods.
But you're still short those special need areas, right?
The special needs are very tight, and also classrooms as well. I mean, as we, again, let's say, when we're working at capacity, there's need for additional classrooms.
Can I ask a question? Your cost per pupil, do you have your cost per pupil? Okay. And the demographic study looks at existing housing stock versus potential new housing stock, and what, given the environment that the school district serves, what is the potential demographically for growth in the existing housing stock as well as potential new? Or do they only look at new and they keep existing at the same level?
They take into account existing and actual live births of children in the area that are residents of Boston. Those are considered in her demographics. So it's new students, or new births, current students that are in the system, and anticipated students based on new developments that may take place. And also, trends that we might be seeing. There's elements that the demographer takes into account as it relates to any trends that we might be noticing as it relates to individuals moving into the area, the types of families moving into the area. Those are all variables that the demographer speaks to and would do a much better job if she were here than I am. But just to give you a sense, there's a lot of
moving parts to the growth of students in the school district. And it is a comprehensive look at existing housing structures versus new. And it's good for the planning board to understand what potentially new development adds and what existing housing structures, what potentially is the growth factor there, given the demographics, et cetera, of the community.
My purpose was to make sure that each and every one of you had clear information as it relates to what's happening within our schools. I know it's often discussed, and I wanted to make sure that you had the most accurate information. I could respond to any questions. I'm happy to share with you the demographer's report. It's public information. We wanted to walk through and read the analysis that she provided. The PowerPoint is on our website as well. I'm happy to forward that to each and every one of you as well, so you can view, and maybe that might answer any other questions.
And you look at the potential for tax revenue from the new developments versus the cost per pupil, et cetera, and how that.
There's overhead.
Please. And the cost potentially for capital projects and your capital projects budget, et cetera. Right? So you look at the revenue from the new development, the cost per pupil, so all of the expenses associated with providing an adequate education to the student.
So
Right.
when you say revenue, what do you mean?
The potential for property tax revenue.
Okay, so here's just to clarify, and for everyone else as well. We raise taxes and so to support the school district budget. So if we're going to raise, I'm just going to use the example, $100, then that $100 is spread among the taxpayers in those tax entities, right? So if you bring in another tax entity to help support, to pay and be part of the $100 overall raising of taxes, that's just going to be less distribution or less cost to everyone else that lives within the community. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Like, so we don't gain any more revenue because there's new developments that come in. That's just perhaps that's to be judged by the community. That's a benefit.
Well, the property taxpayer would pay less to the school district. Is that what you're saying? Is that what your point is?
I'm careful with my words right now. What I want to share with you, well, I'll go back to the one statement, is that we don't gain more revenue as it relates to new developments. No, because we're still going to raise the same level of taxes to support the budget. Right, so that's if you don't have a development, we're still raising $100. If you add a development, now you're just going to add that development to the contribution of raising the $100. Hope that makes sense.
Right. So when new students come into the school district, right, that's an additional expense to the school district, right?
Yes or no? If I have one additional student, I may or may not need an additional teacher, right?
Right.
So it reaches a point where, you know, just assume I have an influx of 24 students, particularly in one particular grade level, that may draw a need for an additional teacher. So that in turn that would include an additional expense to the district.
So what is the potential tipping point for a development? And, because you're right, if you have 24 children, right, that come out of the development, that's additional 24 children, they're distributed among the grades, right?
Yep.
So you may not need an additional teacher, but you're saying you may need maybe additional classrooms if you decide that you want
always gonna be
a lower
cost.
distribution of students to the teacher.
There's always going to be the cost related to resources. However, you know, the need for an additional teacher may not be called for depending on how many are entering a particular grade level. So that's one of the, you know, that's one cost that could be the result of increasing or the new students entering, but the likelihood of 24 students, using that example, all entering at one particular grade level from one development is highly unlikely.
I have a few questions. So, of the 4,900 students that you have, how many excess spaces do you have in your classrooms? So that if a developer comes up to us and says, I'm adding 50 students, on our end, we want to know whether or not you have enough classrooms for that, what the cost of a classroom is. Obviously, a teacher is a teacher,
Right.
the cost of that, but of the fourth, how much capacity do you have at the moment?
He's using the stage, there is no room.
So you're using the stage, so you, so
Right.
again, you have no more, more students in that class.
Excuse me, please, do not scream in this room. We are listening to a presentation.
I don't
Well,
know.
Please do not scream in this room. Thank you.
So you're at capacity right now, so if we're adding 50 in the development, classrooms, 25 students, say, so you
Correct.
need, if someone's saying I'm gonna have 50, you're gonna need 2 more classrooms. And to get 2 new classrooms, it doesn't happen in 1 minute or 1 day, it takes probably a year in the making just to build that.
If not
And
more.
who pays for that? Is it all the 20,000 people in Austining, or whatever the population is, all the taxpayers?
It's all contingent on the school district budget. Number one, if we include those classrooms within our capital line, that could be a choice that we make. Bonds are another choice that could be made. Again, that's a choice of the community in the end.
Are we legally allowed to ask a developer to pay for one of those classrooms? Kathy, I'm asking you if that's legal. If I know someone's coming in with 50 students, can I go up to that developer and say, can you pay for 2 additional classes?
I think it's up to the superintendent of schools with the school board to decide how they use their budget and what their needs are, right? The planning board doesn't determine the school board needs. The superintendent of schools determines what the school board and the school district needs.
But if we go up to you and say we have 50 new students, we approved the development, 50 more students are coming in 6 months or 8 months, what do you do at that point?
May I say something, please?
No, you cannot. I'm asking you can ask at the end. Listen to what the chairman said. It's very rude of you. I'm asking him a question.
I asked politely. I didn't hear that.
So the question is, what would I do if I had 50 students?
Yes.
Additional 50 students coming into one particular building? The choice is, you know, it's very difficult to kind of answer that question. It's contingent on the schools. You know, if we go back to Brookside School, we've just recently developed a lower level to create 2 classrooms. It's given us a little bit of flexibility, not much. We'll be back on the stage if we have 50 students. Because we've been able to mitigate that for next year, but this past year and the year prior, we've had the students up there, and if we had 50 students come in, we'd probably have them right back up there again. Beyond that, I'm more than willing to do an analysis for you to say, if 50 came in here, this is what would happen, 50 would go in here, that's easy enough for me to do. But on the spot, it's kind of, it's really just problem solving and sitting down with staff and saying, what are the priorities here, how can we figure this out to provide the best possible setting for learning for our students, considering the challenges that we have.
The current in-house renovations you were referring to at the school, are they on pace to meet with the projected peak enrollment
At
that's shown here?
At Roosevelt School, yes.
Only at Roosevelt?
Roosevelt's the only building that we're doing in-house renovations, and that's all interior. We're not expanding it, we're just looking at space within the building and trying to be as creative as possible to provide as large classrooms as students need for instruction, excuse me.
Assuming random distribution of school-age children, how many students could the district accommodate, how many new students could district accommodate without any new capital building of any kind?
Yeah, I don't think I'm prepared to answer that question. Just on the, I mean, it goes back to the original. If we're at capacity right now, then we're probably not so ready. It's probably not the right term, but we're not as in as best a position to absorb additional students like the 50 that you mentioned. So.
So, I mean, if you just ballparking, like 10 students you could accommodate, 50 you would require some
Yeah,
change,
those are really.
some building.
It all, what happens is that when we say 10 students, I'm not sure where those students are entering, right?
Right,
So it can be one per grade level over 10 grade levels. That we would likely be able to absorb. Anything, let's assume it's 100, since we're being, we're going through scenarios. That might be more challenging for us as a school district to see an additional 100 students from one year to the next, not having had the chance to plan. Every year we plan because every year we're sitting down and looking at the demographer's report, and the budget's built on what the demographer has anticipated, and then what I propose as class size and sections that I share in turn with the community to consider for a public vote. But again, oftentimes when it's 10, it's distributed among the various buildings. Some may see more than others, but it's never, I haven't experienced, at least at this time, 10 enter at one building at one time, and no other, no other schools impact.
But if I understand you correctly, you're pretty close to capacity,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
It's out of capacity.
Yeah.
And over, as you said, over capacity in some cases. Generally, you're at capacity.
Well, thank you for the information.
While we've got you here. I'm curious to know how nearby communities compare in terms of their school demographics. Tarrytown, Croton,
Go on the website.
and
I
some
can
others.
share, I often meet once a month with superintendents in Putnam Northern, and then with superintendents within Westchester, Putnam, Dutchess, and Rockland County. What we know is that many of those school districts are seeing decreases in enrollment. In fact, some are even closing schools as a result of that, and trying to be creative in terms of what do they do with this empty building. So the trend is, I'll just use Katona as an example. They closed the entire school. I think it was all publicized some years ago. Some of the discussions that they were having with their community. So the overall trend is that individual school districts are seeing a decrease in enrollment.
Could you explain, that's a very interesting point that you're making. Could you explain why Ossining is seeing an increase versus a Katona or a Briarcliff is seeing
I'd always
a
like to
decrease?
say, I'd always like to start by saying it's the quality of the education. But it's much
Well,
more
we know
than
it's
that.
much more than that, right?
But it's much more than that. So part of it is developments, which we've talked about. Some of it is just the trends in terms of who's coming into the communities and, you know,
It's some of the demographics. It has a lot to do with the demographics.
They've looked at parochial school that closed some years ago, that had a slight impact on us as well. That was another variable that we've taken into account in our moment. Those are just a few. There's, that I can, off the top of my head, I can think of.
Mhm. Well, thank you. Thank you for the information, and thank you for your time tonight.
I want to thank you for your time, and I leave here, but I'm willing to come back and answer questions. As I leave, if there's questions that I didn't answer for you, I'm happy to come share it with you and provide it to you in some documentation.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, our next application is the Butler subdivision.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the board. Since our last appearance at the planning board meeting, we've increased the entrance road to a width of 22 foot. And that would extend from Deer Trail to just past the existing pavement. We've increased the width of the entrance road from Deer Trail to the current terminus of the paved driveway. So it would go from Deer Trail to the current terminus at 22 foot and then be reduced to 16 foot. Another topic that came up at the last planning board meeting was the matter of New York State Department of Environmental Conservation jurisdiction over the project. We were presented with apparently a download from a website that showed a yellow area along the drainage ditch area of Route 100. The day following, or the second day following that planning board meeting, I made telephone calls to the state DEC to request a delineation of wetlands. The response I received was to write a letter to an individual in New Paltz, which I did immediately. We received the response to my request on Monday afternoon. That response was a written letter that stated we should chat with a young lady by the name of Heather, the last name I have forgotten, but the board has been provided with that letter. And we are to call her to make an appointment for the wetlands delineation. What the DEC does during these wetland delineations is place flags where, in their opinion, the limits of the wetlands exist. And that is determined by the federal standards generally. Typically, the vegetation, the flora, and the soils. They use a little core sampler to determine the soils to visual inspection. So once they placed these flags, like little wire flags for sprinkler systems, we will send a surveyor out to locate those flags and determine the distance from the flag, the DEC flag locations in our property. They stated to us there is a 100-foot buffer in which it's controlled. Okay, it's not prohibited, but work is controlled. So if it's 110 feet, DEC is not in the picture. If it's 100 feet or less, they conceivably are in the picture. We will make that call in the next day or so to request that delineation. That's all I have to report.
David, do you have
We have
any?
nothing, we're waiting for what Jim is talking about. We're waiting for what Jim is talking about so we can move the process forward, but we have nothing at this point.
Okay. Kathy? Dan?
I'm staying here, just waiting to resolve that issue, see if that property
Can you
is
speak a little louder, please? We can't hear you.
Okay.
Likewise, just waiting on resolution of the DEC wetlands issue, in that if it is present, will affect the sewers and will require permitting by the DEC.
Okay. So at this point, you don't know if there's a wetland, or do they anticipate that there is in fact a wetland on the property?
It's to be determined.
Okay, so they're gonna come out and they're gonna look at the property, and then if there is a wetland, they're gonna flag it, and you're going to submit new plans to us with the wetland?
Well, there's, in that letter that they sent to us, there was a statement by the DEC employee that said there are no DEC wetlands on the property. There are no year-round flowing streams on the property,
Okay,
along with several other paragraphs.
right,
So when they come out, and they were talking about the Mechanical River particularly,
right,
which is on the opposite side of Route 100, substantially more than 100 feet from the property. So we will find out where their flags are placed at the time of their inspection, and then we were then able to measure the distance from those flags to the property.
Jim was
And that
talking,
will tell, I'm sorry, David.
I'm not sure if I interrupted you or vice versa, but just to follow up on what you're saying, Jim, once those flags have been surveyed, generally the map goes back to the DEC for their jurisdictional determination, right? And they,
Okay.
we
We have nothing to hide, whether it goes to the it certainly comes to this board.
yeah, and
To go to the
depending
DEC.
upon where the flags are, there'll be a jurisdictional determination most likely, and there'll be a map which the DEC puts their signature on, which says, this is an accurate representation of where the wetland is.
okay. Do you,
What's the proposed road width when you reach 3 Hillcrest?
I'm sorry?
3 Hillcrest Drive, when you get to the driveway there, what's the proposed road width?
Coming from Deer Trail
Yes,
to the planter on Hillcrest? Or
for
from
access,
planter-
for access to their property, the existing house.
It's 22 foot wide from Deer Trail to the planter. It's proposed to be 22 foot wide from Deer Trail to the planter.
And what is it now?
8 feet, 9 feet,
Okay,
10 feet perhaps.
thank you.
Hi. Could you clarify something? So I have the letter from DC here that you provided. It's signed by Catherine Coffin and CC'd to a Heather Gearloff. In it, under freshwater wetlands heading, it says the project site is near or in freshwater wetland 0-14 class 1. So it seems that they're concerned with this one particular wetland that may be a DEC-regulated wetland. And their delineation, I suppose, and this is a question, will their delineation be limited to this particular 0.0-14 wetland of their concern? Or will they delineate any wetlands within a 100-foot buffer of the entire property. And I ask that because the town regulations, wetland regulations, have a more stringent standard for what constitutes a wetland than the DEC does. And of course, we want to know whether there are any town of Austining designated wetlands. You will be providing that. If they don't, but can you tell me whether they will be doing the entire property or just this one wetland as named?
Well, the DEC activities are restricted to the DEC wetlands per their definition. You have to understand that when they map a wetlands, all right, it's an aerial mapping first, and it's of the entire state of New York. They do not go out to every wetland and delineate the limits of it, then locate it by GPS, then superimpose it on a map, and then color it in yellow. They use USGS maps in conjunction with aerial photos, and they take a marker for today's computer equivalent of it, and they say, gee, this looks about right. And then they put a number on it. Now that point was brought up at the last meeting, that, oh, here, look at this map, it shows the yellow, and therefore it's in it. Well, the yellow is a pictorial representation, but the reason we're having an on-site delineation is to accurately locate the DEC wetland.
I understand that, but
That's
their
right.
map may be overstating or understating where a wetland may be.
The answer is that it's unlikely that they're going to go beyond their jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yeah, they just
That's the
concern themselves with
That particular
their
one of concern.
definitions.
Okay. So can you point out roughly where on your site plan is this wetland of their concern?
Well, it's the Mechanical River, it's not shown on this map.
But can you just show me generally?
We all know what Route 100 is, we all know what the Mechanical River.
Where did you see the yellow on their map? Just pointed out on your site
I
plan.
did, the young lady.
Oh, okay, you've never seen the yellow.
Oh, I did, at the last meeting, a young lady came up with an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And it was a very, very large scale, and it showed the yellow polygon.
Do you remember where it was relative to your site plan?
Well, I know it covered this ditch,
Okay.
which is definitely not a year-round flowing stream.
Okay, so it's located in that lower portion, lower left portion of your site plan? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the eastern side.
Okay, good. And so the reason I was asking is because some months ago, I tried to walk around the property and get a sense of it, and I came across a substantial wetland in a different spot. Since I didn't know the boundaries of the property, I don't know whether that's 100 feet away from your this property or 500 yards away. So it may be completely irrelevant. But
Well,
the wetland that I saw that I'd be interested in knowing where it is, really accurately, is to the upper right of this site plan. So I'd like to know for sure that you have considered that wetland, and that when you come back before the board, and if you say there were no other wetlands besides this DEC one, that you will have considered that one that I saw.
well, I don't know what you saw, but what we can do is define any wetlands, if there are any, within a certain distance of the property.
Okay, so you will be doing that.
Pardon me?
You will be doing that, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what
okay.
you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, to the south of the property, beyond the stone wall, between the edge of the property and Chappaqua Road, there's a substantial drainage board. A substantial drainage board. And there are homes there.
That's where that White House is, right? Where that White House
Yeah,
is.
bridge going across, and then down closer to Route 100, there's a structure there, there's a separate garage.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be go out there with Steve. That process.
Yeah, we can request that Steve Coleman do a review and on this particular application, so that we make sure that we have everything mapped accurately on the plan as we move through the CEQA process with the application.
Well, we could, what we can do is get a wetlands person out there.
Yeah, that would be
And
Steve, yeah,
As
Coleman.
far as mapping it, I don't believe we need to map it.
Okay. Okay. So have your consultant, hire a wetlands consultant to review the site. And we will hire our expert to review that work.
Well, is that Steve?
I think what Ingrid is suggesting is that you hire a consultant, and do the work, and we'll review the work, as opposed to doing the primary work.
Fine. But what we're gonna do is, we'll get the town's definition of restrictive distance, and we'll build that restrictive distance around the property. But if we're not gonna go 500 yards north to wherever some conceivable wetland is.
So I believe that it's within our jurisdiction or purview to be able to request that you go within 200 feet of the boundary and map anything within 200 feet.
Is that,
I think Eric is probably referring to how far away you got to show information from the property line generally. But I could check that.
Right.
That will ultimately be a point, a statement in your review memo.
Not in mine, but Steve's.
Right, but if he hasn't done what he has to do
Yes.
as per the code, you will note that in your review memo, and then you'd have to go back and do the review.
suppose I propose this, you tell us how far around the property you want us to look, according to the town code of Wilton Block.
It's up to you to review the town code, and then you present the plan based upon what you've reviewed. Okay?
Very good.
Thank you.
Is there any, I'll ask this of David, actually, if the buffer for something is X feet, 100 feet or whatever, is it reasonable to think that it would be 100 feet beyond a property line?
If the subdivision regulations say that the subdivision plat has to show all information within 200 feet of the property line,
Irrespective of just wetlands, anything?
then everything would have to be shown.
Okay.
But I don't understand that. All the information includes a lot of stuff. It includes contour.
I'm not saying it's
roads,
too,
mailboxes, trees.
yeah, I'm not saying it's 200 feet, Jim.
He's not
Wait,
saying
But
that.
it was 5 or 10 foot beyond for the contour.
Okay, that may be the case, and if that's the case, then you should do what's in the code.
Yeah,
Okay.
whatever the code says. And it's a little hard to tell you right now, but give me a call and we'll go over it.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think.
May I address the board first about this particular topic? Hello. I'd like to address the board about this particular topic. Can you hear me up there? This is a public hearing, so the public will have an opportunity to speak on this application. Please allow the planning board to ask their questions of the applicant at this point. All right, okay? Thank you.
200 feet for that particular information. That is not, we're not asking for 200 feet for all information. That is, there's a different dimension that David can provide to you that is required. We are allowed to request specific information up to 200 feet out. And so I'm requesting that you do wetland delineation out to 200 feet. That's not.
Concerns that I have, what some of the neighbors have mentioned in some of the prior meetings that we've had on this, and it's really the roadway of Hillcrest. And when you're looking at your maps, that you've submitted, I see some stone walls that are bordering on some of the people, the neighbors' properties. And when you expand the size of that road to accommodate 2 more houses, I would rather see that you're expanding the road on your properties and as far away from those other neighbors over there. And I'm not sure whether or not I'm happy having a 20-foot wide road there for just 2 houses. But again, the one neighbor who wrote the letter, he's not in today, he's not here today, but he wrote a pretty detailed letter expressing his concerns with his children and everything like that. And when I'm looking at this map again, I see stone walls and planters and other things that are on, not necessarily their property, but it's like a gray zone. And you're coming in here and you're just bulldozing that area away and making a 20-foot wide road to accommodate 2 houses. Yes, whether or not it's legally needed for a fire truck or a delivery truck or something like that, but, or to turn around or something like that, it just,
Well,
I just don't want to disrupt the other 2 neighbors, the other 4 neighbors on the west side of this road. That's my concern.
Understood. We are not proposing the new pavement, if you will, any closer than the existing driveway. The existing asphalt driveway is very close to the existing stone wall and all the existing properties on the west side of Hillcrest Drive right away. We're not going any closer than it currently exists. We're not touching that at all. We're widening it towards the applicant's property. So there's no further encroachment towards the existing homes.
And is this a road that the town plows and garbage trucks go down? I don't.
No, the town does not plow it.
So again, as we brought up in many other planning board meetings or the other residents, who pays for this road? Who pays to plow this road? I live on a paper road also, and I know what that's like, where you have to negotiate with your neighbors to pay to plow, to have garbage trucks, or whatever it might be, all these different things. And here you're building 2 other houses, and I don't know what agreements are out there, again, to maintain this road, pave it.
Well, the
or,
developer is obliged to incur the cost of capital construction to pay it. The town is not obliged to remove the snow or maintain it in any way. As far as garbage pickup, that's a situation they have.
so here you want to build a new road. The developer's going to come in there one time, spend X dollars, pave it. What happens 5 years from now when you have to repave it, 10 years from now, 15, 20, 25? Who's paying for that property?
Well, the developer, I think it's important that there is a plan as to maintenance, as to how the garbage will be picked up. If it's a homeowners association, there needs to be a structure, or is it going to be dedicated to the town? How is it going to work?
Well, it's clearly not going to be dedicated to the town because it doesn't meet legal.
So what is the plan?
Well, the homeowner association, if you will, the developer can only control the 2 new houses.
Okay.
They have no control over the existing houses. My question would be, as with this gentleman's situation, who plows the road or driveway now? It gets handled. It's the developer that controls these two. The developer cannot control these. So if it's being suggested that a homeowners association be created for operation and maintenance of this road, including homes that exist here that are clearly opposed to the subdivision, that'll never occur. It's a clear obstacle to approval.
I think the only real answer, Jim, is that the 3 homes that you would control would have to take responsibility for maintenance of the roadway.
For doing what?
For maintenance of the roadway?
Of the entire roadway, although others are using it?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
As a condition of the approval of this subdivision.
We'll take that under advisement.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Now,
Can I make one point? Jim, section 105(7)(a)(2), additional information may be requested by the planning board, including any of the following: the location of all wetlands, water courses, and water bodies on the site under review, and within 200 feet of the site, no earlier than 12 months prior to the date of filing the application.
So we go 200 feet for wetlands.
That's what it says, yes.
Not a problem.
okay, so this is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to be heard on the 2 Hillcrest Drive Butler subdivision application? Okay. Ma'am, could you please come to the front? Please state your name and your address and your comment.
My name is Nancy Barry. I live on 3 Gordon Avenue, which runs parallel to Hillcrest. I'm not going to be directly impacted by the developer. My question to you all is how well you do your due diligence about impacts in the neighborhood. There was a development that went back behind my house on wetlands. It was permitted by the board. I had a tremendous amount of water now in my backyard, and it's due to that development. You allowed them to build on wetlands. You went through this whole thing. I actually was on the environmental committee at the time, and I recused myself because there was a conflict of interest. And regardless of whether the DEC, everybody collectively knew that there were wetlands, you guys approved it. So my question to you all is, are you going to be held accountable for any loss of property value or use for anybody back there, for any damage, as you continue to approve these developments on environmentally sensitive properties. Because it seems to me that you go through all of this, you make this, the developers go through all this stuff, incur a lot of charges, and you allow the public and the residents who are going to be impacted by this come through meeting after meeting after meeting, and nothing gets done to protect the people's quality of life. Really. I'm sorry about this. I really got it. I feel very strongly about this. I have a backyard that my son has not been able to use when it rains. And you're more than welcome to come to my house on a rainy day and look at it. Because now I have to, because there's continual flooding,
Ma'am?
there's more development, impervious surface.
I understand your point. I understand.
I don't think you do. I don't think you do.
Can you make your comments so that we're talking right now about a public hearing for the Butler subdivision?
But I am telling you that. I'm telling you that you guys need to do your due diligence and put yourself in the positions of these people who are living in that community. Because it seems to me that repetitively, there's been an overdevelopment, not only in the community as abroad, but specifically in the North State corridor. You have another development that's pending, that's gonna be somewhere down, I think it's 507 North State Road. You had another development that was just put on that basically, if you drive down Gordon Avenue, there's condo complexes here, and it basically is in people's backyard, and there's water that runs off there. If you're familiar with the North State corridor, it's a cesspool. It comes down like this, and there's like a little pool area, and your engineer should know this, okay? When you built the police station, you built the Briar Oaks, you built the Briar Commons, and now you want to build over here, you have to understand something. Where does that water go when it's all impervious surface? It's going to come down like this, and that's my house. And I'm not going to get my full value of my house because thanks to the town board and the environmental committee, which hasn't done their due diligence, I have to try to mitigate water after water after water to no avail. Because you can't mitigate water when you take away a wetland. When you take away a wetland, that's a natural sponge. All it does is elevate the water table. And if you have a seasoned engineer, he should know that.
I just want to reflect that the planning board has requested that the applicant first delineate this state wetland.
But you're missing
and
what I
has
said.
also,
That was done when that was supposed to be done in my backyard.
I know, but
Look
now
at
on
it.
this application, we have taken, as you heard tonight, the first step, asking the applicant to go out 200 feet and identify any wetlands, town wetlands, and then also the state wetlands. So I think that's the first step, is to first identify what's out there, and then there'll be a process going forward to review those wetlands. But you heard that the planning board, right, can't review something if we don't know it's there yet. So that's the first step in the process, to delineate the wetlands. And you've heard the board ask to go 200 feet out and identify any wetlands.
But I also heard that the stream that runs behind my house was going to be dredged every couple of years. And it's been at least 13 years, and that, maybe more, has not been dredged. So, I mean, I try to take stock and faith in what you all say, but you gotta pardon me for being a little bit hesitant when it comes to that, because I live with the impact of something like that every day.
Is there any other members of the public who would like to speak? Thank you. Please come to the front.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph Kelly. My wife and I live at One Hillcrest Drive, which is the first house as we turn in. I appreciate the board's attention to detail on this, and I think this is my comment. Yes, I guess. Questions are, thank you for addressing the shared use issue. Right now, garbage is currently collected down the right-of-way road, although there is no plowing, it's privately plowed, and the Kantrowitz family and I split the cost every year. I urge you to go take a look at the site and envision a 22-foot road that extends into the properties that are proposed. If you look down on that right-of-way, it looks like an amusement park ride. It is a really severe steep drop. I can't envision a situation where someone is going to be able to build a house and get out of their driveway or keep the basement from getting flooded. It is really a steep slope. And 22 feet is significant. It's widening that road more than almost 2.5 times. So I would urge you to go out and take a look at that. It really is a substantial difference. Also, I'm concerned with, I know the engineer has said that the development would be responsible for creating this, extending this road. That being said, what about wear and tear on the existing paved road? You know what I mean? It's not, it was put in by Scott Kantrowitz at Hillcrest, you know, out of his generosity. And if we're going to have construction equipment going up and down there for 2 years, it's going to rip that to shreds. So those are my concerns. So go envision a 22-foot road and look at the abyss. Thank you very much.
Any other members would like to, residents would like to speak on this application?
Hi, Vicki Capoza, 409 Chappaqua Road. My house is right here. Whole privacy issue. This house will be overlooking my whole backyard, because it will be at much higher. I think he said the last meeting about 30 feet. And I already have a wall that's, I'm sorry. I already have a wall that's about anywhere from 5 feet to about 8 feet. So a 30-foot house will be on top of that property, overlooking my whole backyard. There won't be any trees, fences, you name it. On top of that, a 22-foot street will not accommodate a fire truck. I spoke to Fire Department. And there's no way that their fire, if anything ever happens to these two houses down here, that they could never get to it. And I personally spoke to them. My other issue is, these maps are all from Westchester County and the state. This is a steep slope. This is his house. The steep slopes are in here and up here. Exactly where he's bringing a driveway in. These are the wetlands. Anyone can find this online, including him. They cover this whole area into my property. If he moves his house into the 200-foot, and you said the boundary, that will bring those houses up to probably a brick wall, because there's no way. You can't build a driveway now. You won't be able to build one then. And the sewer department is run by the county. I also contacted them. He needs permission from them also to run any kind of sewer line, which will be running along my back wall on this property, from one end of my house to the other end. Now, I know he's putting access there for sewer or whatever maintenance has to be done, but it's in my backyard. And it's going to be 26 feet. The house will be 26 feet from my property line. So in between that will be my yard, his sewer lines, and a house. I came up to Briarcliff and paid almost $40,000 in taxes because of the schools and because of the privacy. I might as well go back to Yonkers. There'll be house on top of house on top of house. No privacy, overcrowded schools. This is not fair. And you know what tops it all up? He doesn't live there. If he lived in that house, he wouldn't be building 2 houses behind him. He lives in Pleasantville and he wants to make money. On our backs, we all live there. Our children are there. Our families are there. He'll go home to his private house with his privacy and everything will be fine and dandy, because you know what? He made a few lives miserable. And it's not fair. So I know that you went out to the property, I'm assuming you looked at it, you saw the steep slopes. If you wait till the fall, you will see the water running along 100. I take that walk all the time. It does come off the back of that property. As Mr. Bowman said himself, he took a look at it. He does not live there. If you have any kind of heart or whatever for our families, for our property values, for anything, or for the school system that is overcrowded already, reconsider this whole thing. And not make us all come here almost every month and sit here at a meeting for hours. The last time is 12:30 in the morning, we all left here. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public?
Back of my property is on Hillcrest. Here's my property. I just would like to echo what the previous speaker said. I don't want to repeat what their concerns are. They're my concerns as well. The safety, the access, the services, who's going to pay for services, and in particular the wetlands. I would just like to be made part of the record again, the previous letters that I had on before the public hearing, which I gave to the board. I don't need to repeat what's in there. I believe that the board has read the letters, but I'd just like to make them part of the record again. I would like them to be made part of the record because this is the first public hearing, and I think that you know what my concerns are from the letters. I'm particularly concerned with regard, and I appreciate that the town is now going to address the wetland issue, and not just the wetlands, the DEC wetlands, but the town wetlands, because there is a lot of wetlands there, and I think that the environmental issue here is really primary, especially given, as I cite in my last letter, Chapter 105 of the Town of Hostling's ordinances regarding wetlands protection. As the board indicated earlier, there's really a higher standard, and as it was amended in December 2015, it's a wetland now of any size, not just the previous minimum size that Old Hosling in the town addressed. So I think that obviously, from what I've heard tonight, that the hearing is going to be continued, it's not going to be closed, and when you get more information about the wetlands, I'd like to be heard further in that regard, because I think that that's really the key issue here, in addition to all the concerns of the character of the neighborhood. I think that the character of that corridor and the way that the town looks in that corridor will be really disturbed, and the character of the neighborhood and the quality of life of the neighbors who have to stay there after this development goes in needs to be taken into account as well. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jill Chazakinak, and I live on Deer Trail, which is right across from the entryway of this paper road that we're talking about. First, I think Joe had a question that he didn't know to ask, and so I'm going to ask it for him. With the proposed increase of the roadway there to 22 feet, does that still mean that, Joe, where are you? What's the word I want?
Setback.
Thank you. The setback he has on his plans is sufficient? I don't know that. My point of the whole thing is, I wrote a letter last year, and I don't know, I don't know what to expect. Do I get an answer from that? Are my questions answered, or does it just go into a file? I asked about the fire protection. My house is the one that has the fire hydrant for the entire neighborhood. I don't know if it's sufficient to cover that area. And I don't know if anyone has checked into that. I did ask that a year ago in a letter. Also, my house is the house where all of their mailboxes would go. It's not a great situation right now. It's on a curve. The kids play there, and if they're coming up the street and somebody's coming down the paper road on the other side, it's going to be a tragic accident. You have to look at those types of things also. And I also want to restate the fact that it's a quiet neighborhood. It's been a great neighborhood. 2 houses is too much for that neighborhood to absorb right there. It just is. So we would like you to keep all that in consideration. Thanks.
Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak at this point? Is the property currently staked? To show property lines, et cetera, building, lot lines? No? Okay.
Can you,
We have physical boundaries with stone wall here and whatnot. Their corners kind of strange.
I live right nearby there also. Actually, a few of us do. Is it possible if you could go out and put yellow stakes or something? Not just in the 5 corners, whatever else. I'd like to walk around it. I'd like to see, because this is like the 4th hearing we've had on this, and now I figure out where it is, how close it is. I really want to look at it. The property, the slope of the property.
I can bring it by and bring that.
I can do it on Saturday even.
But I work for you.
And also, one other thing that I want to bring up, with North State Road and the Senior Citizen Memory Center, the water that's running from the back of our houses, again, is the same water that's going past where that apartment building is that they built at the corner of Chappaqua and North State Road, and then it's going straight down. All this water, I mean, the meetings that we've had on the other property on North State Road, this is just a continuation, I don't want to say further south, but it's a continuation further south and east of that same of that water. And what?
That is on the other side of this hill. Well,
Yeah, but all the water is still coming, it's trickling on down to that along Chappaqua Road where they have that big giant monster pipe right there. That's where all that water is coming from North State Road, from the ponds behind our houses and stuff like that. It's all trickling down there. I know it says 200 feet, David, but I really want to see a larger map of where all the water is coming from Ryder Park and whatever else, in towards this property, because I think just looking at a little, 200 little foot, I think it's a bigger picture. Some of those people brought it up. It's concerning me. I'd like to see a little bit larger map.
When I was town engineer here, I did that study. Okay?
Well, I've been on the planning board since January 1st, okay? I want to see a little bit more before I make a value decision as to yay and nay. And
I think if you check with council, you'll find that this is not in the drainage. This particular property is not in the drainage area that you're asking the applicant to study. And we propose a 0 increase in rate of runoff. So I don't believe that request is appropriate. However, I could be overridden.
I haven't been to the site. I'm going to go there on Saturday. If I'm permitted.
I'd like to have some guidance, if you would, on that 200-foot. What happens when the property owner, or should the property owner not allow us on their property? If we go 200 feet or 150 feet from the property line to see if there's wetlands there, and that property owner says, do not enter my property, what is our course of action?
Well, you can't enter the property, right?
Right.
Then I can't map the wetlands.
You do the best.
Well, I would make every effort
Oh, no question.
to map the wetland, right? I would knock on the door, say what you're doing. So I would make every effort.
No question.
I think what you need to do is you need to attempt to map the wetland, and if you run into an issue, then we have an issue. But at this point, we don't have an issue, so we're requesting that it be done.
If I could add to that, if there's an area that you are unable to access, I think it should be shown on the map as, that it was inaccessible, so that there isn't the implication that there is no waterway just because you didn't see it.
I'm sorry?
If you can't get to a spot
Right.
within that 200, show it as a hatch mark or something on the site plan.
Well, it'll indicate no entry.
Indicate no entry allowed, so that we're not making,
Gareth, unless there's some available information, some mapping
Yeah.
that indicates that there is a well.
yeah, no, good point.
Well, the
Yeah.
wetlands,
Use all available information, yes.
Any other member of the public who would like to speak on this application at this time? Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. We will continue our public hearing to our next meeting.
Yes, and we'll keep you appraised of developments with the DEC and the wetlands delineation.
Should we make it the first time? I don't think we're going to have a work session on the 3rd, but on August 17th, we'll only have 3 members. So should we move our regular meeting to August 3rd? Do you want to move our regular meeting to August 3rd? Huh?
I'm going to be at Eaton's available each day.
Okay. So we can do that. We can set, we can have our regular meeting on August 3rd. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay, will you be available, will the information be ready for the August 3rd meeting?
We will effort that. I have no control over the CDC.
Okay.
But we're just going to go at it right away.
Okay.
I would say it's going to take longer than that to get a jurisdictional determination. And you don't want to come back and get beat up on the 3rd, do you? You don't have to.
2 hours drive.
So maybe first meeting in September?
Okay. September.
5th is the first Wednesday. 3rd Wednesday is the 16th.
Okay, so.
Sorry, I'm in October. 7 and 21.
So we'll continue the public hearing, September 7th, 2007. Okay, and we will see you then. Thank you. Thank you. So our next item on the agenda is the Joanne Schneider application, 74 Hawks Avenue, 2-lot subdivision. This is a public hearing as well.
Good evening. David Sessions with Keller Sessions Consulting. This is a 2-lot subdivision on 74 Hawks Avenue. The last time we were before the board, I believe the 30-day lead agency timeframe had not expired yet. Therefore, the planning board was not able to declare itself lead agency. I'm certain that that 30-day period has expired at this point, so at least this evening, we're asking for the planning board to make its determination of lead agency. Also, Mr. Stallman, FP Clark, had some comments at the last meeting regarding a tree survey, and the planning board as well had a comment about requiring a tree survey along the northern property line, which we have conducted. We've indicated that on the revised plans in the revised subdivision plat. There were easements in favor of Lot 1 and in favor of Lot 2 that had to be presented on the plans and on the plat, which we have done. There was a neighbor, Mr. Gordon, who I'm sure is in the audience this evening, who owns the property to the north. There was discussion about his driveway, which encroached onto the Schneider's property, and how we were going to handle that. We've had some offline discussions with Mr. Gordon, and he can correct me this evening if I say anything that's inaccurate, but Ms. Schneider and Mr. Gordon have reached an agreement that there will be an easement created to allow Mr. Gordon to continue to use his portion of the driveway that encroaches onto Ms. Schneider's property. That easement has also been shown on the revised plat, which has been submitted to the planning board. And as recently as this afternoon, we submitted to the planning board secretary and to Mr. Stolman the easement agreements for Lot 1, Lot 2, and the agreement that discusses the driveway encroachment. We're hoping that this evening the board can declare itself lead agency. We can close the public hearing. I believe that Mr. Stolman has drafted a draft resolution, which I'm assuming that we'll discuss a little bit this evening. I haven't received a copy of it, but I have now. So that's essentially all I have, and I'll turn it over to your board.
Thank you. David?
Do you want to continue the public hearing now before, get
Yeah.
comments before we go on?
Could you, if you could just go over the resolution, we'll have our comments,
Sure.
from the public in a few minutes.
Why don't I paraphrase through the whereas paragraphs. On page 1, we have the owner and the applicant identified, the subdivision described, zoning district mentioned. Second whereas, the tax map designation of the property. And third whereas has the 4 drawings which have been prepared by Kellard Sessions that we've been reviewing. And then we also received a topo survey prepared for this project in the next whereas. In the following whereas, we mentioned the application for subdivision approval in the short environmental assessment form. Next, that the planning board is familiar with the subject property and its surroundings and has reviewed the project in accordance with the standards for approval in the zoning law and subdivision regulations. Next, that the application was referred to the Westchester County Planning Board, and the top of page 2, that the planning board responded that this was a matter for local determination. Next, that on July 12, 2010, the ZBA granted an area variance of 40 feet for the proposed new lot, which requires a 50-foot wide strip of land connecting the main portion of the lot with the street. Following that this is a minor subdivision as defined by the town subdivision regulations. Then we mentioned the public hearing which was held on June 15th and the one that's being held tonight. Now therefore be it resolved that in accordance with the requirements of the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, and based upon the review of the EAF and all of the application materials that have been submitted for this action, the planning board hereby adopts the attached negative declaration for the reasons stated therein, and finds that this project will have no significant adverse impact to the environment. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby grants subdivision plat approval to the project. And then we have conditions subject to the various conditions and modifications that are enumerated here. Prior to the endorsement of the subdivision plat by the planning board chairman, the following conditions shall be fulfilled to the satisfaction of the planning board. We're going to need a plat which mirrors to a significant degree the plan that, or the plans that Dave Sessions has prepared by a licensed land surveyor. Next, that the subdivision drawings and the plat shall be such that they meet the satisfaction of Dan, and Dan's got a new review memo dated today. So everything in Dan's memo, including the fact that a site plan will need to be prepared and reviewed and approved by the planning board prior to the issuance of the building permit for the newly created lot. we'll make sure that the resolution says that very specifically. Top of page 3, the subdivision plat shall be endorsed by the Westchester County Department of Health for the water supply and sewage disposal facilities. Next, the applicant has to provide a letter from the Village of Ossining, which confirms the adequacy of the water system. Next, the applicant shall submit driveway maintenance and access easement agreements for both lots which meet the satisfaction of the planning board attorney in form and substance. We're going to add those words. And we'll also mention the other easement.
We'll put his address or whatever,
Yeah, we'll
or section plate block and lot.
Yep. Next, the shed encroaching on lot 1 from the neighboring property shall be removed. Next, the applicant shall submit a statement signed by the town receiver of taxes that indicates that all taxes due on the subject property have been paid. Next, a recreation fee for the one additional lot being created in the amount of $7,500. Next, all outstanding application review fees shall be paid. And then we have a section which talks about how these things have to be accomplished within 180 days of the adoption of this resolution, unless the planning board extends that time with 90-day extensions. Top of page 4, the following are general conditions as the project progresses to completion. The first is the stock paragraph regarding application review fees being paid. Then a paragraph which basically says that the plat has to be filed in the county clerk's office within 62 days of its being signed by the planning board chairman. Thereafter, 3 copies have to be filed with the town building and planning department. And then all construction shall be in accordance with best management practices. And no portion of any approval by the planning board shall take effect until all conditions herein are met. We need an additional condition which states that once the easements have been filed in the county clerk's office, copies need to be submitted to the town building and planning department, and evidence of the filing has to be provided. And then attached to that, we have part 3 of we have the negative declaration, which consists of part 3 of the short environmental assessment form, which I've signed, and if this is adopted, Ingrid would sign her name on page 4 as well. And then we have an attachment to the neg deck which provides the reasoning for the issuance of the neg deck. Essentially, this is one home being created, one new lot, one new home being created, and all of the reasoning is based upon that. I can read through that if you'd like, or you can just kind of gaze through it before you entertain the adoption of this resolution.
Kathy, do you have any comments at this time?
I just think we should add, maybe to 1B, that we should add the phrase including compliance with the conditions set forth in the July 20th, 2016 memorandum of the planning board's consulting engineer, just so it's clear that these conditions are also.
Dan, do you have any additional comments?
So I guess I'll just read my comments into the record, which are fairly brief. So as regard to the latest set of plans, item 1, amend the zoning table on the site plan to include a slope analysis to confirm that all the proposed lots conform to the latest revisions to the town code. Add a note to the plat. There is a note on the site plan right now, but the note should also be added to the plat to put any future purchaser of the property on notice that construction of the proposed residence shown on lot 1 will require site plan approval by the planning board. The proposed residence will require stormwater management practices to mitigate the increase in runoff resulting from the increase in impervious surfaces. The stormwater system will be designed to accommodate the runoff for the proposal presented to the planning board in the future. The stormwater system will also need to comply with the storm regulations in effect at the time of site plan approval. And then finally, if the existing residence is served by public water, the location of the service should be shown on the site plan and on the plat. If it's served by a well, the location of the well should be shown. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Member Lucinas, do you have any comments at this time? Member Huffman? Okay. I would like to ask,
Just one more comment. David mentioned that we needed to submit a subdivision plat by a surveyor. We have submitted that plat. It was part of the submission package. Obviously, we need to add a note per Dan's comment, but just for the record, the plat has been submitted
okay,
by the surveyor.
thank you. Any member of the public who would like to be heard on the Schneider application, 74 Hawks Avenue?
My name is Keith Gordon. I live at 78 Hawks Avenue, directly next to what will be the new parcel. It's our driveway that is the beneficiary of this easement. In principle, we're in agreement with the applicant regarding the easement, but I just received, a chance to read it today, here tonight, so I really haven't been able to evaluate it. Certainly haven't been able to mark out meets and bounds as to what it really means. So other than that, I'm hoping we'll be able to work out the details of the language of that easement. There's some restrictions about parking and things like that that are not clear to me.
I'd ask that you work with the neighbor
Yes.
on that document, please. Is there any other member of the public who would like to be heard?
My name is Jennifer Fox. I'm a resident of Ossining. This doesn't necessarily pertain to this particular development, so I hope you beg my permission for just a few minutes. I was hoping to speak after Ray Sanchez, and then this basically pertains to the development that's being proposed throughout Ossining and the impact on the schools. As a concerned parent and as an educator, the one thing that I think that the board might not understand or needs to think about or educate themselves on. Ossining is funded by the state, it's funded by our tax dollars. Ossining, the state funds us based on a formula that was developed before 2008, and it was frozen in 2008 when the recession hit. It's called Foundation Aid. So what has happened in the past since 2008? Well, Ossining's school population has increased, as Mr. Sanchez said, by over 900 students. The number of students we have in poverty in this town has also increased. Other districts have decreased, but the aid that we get from the state is the same. Alita Zuber, the Assistant Superintendent for Business, and Ray Sanchez, and members of the community have gone up to Albany numerous times to try to get this rectified. To give you an idea about the money that we get from the state, Ossining is the third most underfunded district in the entire state of New York. The entire state of New York. So when you talk about funds coming into Ossining, there are only 2 districts in the entire state that get less money for our schools than we deserve than Ossining does. And this has been a fight that has gone on in the state. One of the gentlemen asked how much revenue we would receive from these projects. The answer is none. Because that's the way a tax cap works. A tax cap isn't a percentage increase per household. It's an overall percentage increase for the town. So to give you an analogy, if by law, the tax cap says that we are allowed to charge $1,000, and there are 10 residents in Ossining, well, every resident gets to pay $100. Well, then a developer comes in, and they say, we want to build something, and we say yes, and we say, great, guess what, the town's still only allowed to charge $1,000. So now the developer gets to pay $200, and everybody gets to pay $80. So there's no more money for our schools than what's already allocated by law. And I'm sure this is the way it was explained to me by a member of the school board, and this is something that you can look up. To give you an idea as an educator, I do not teach in Westchester. I teach in the Bronx, where the student level where the maximum number of students In K through 5, it's 32. I teach second grade, and I have had 29 students in my class. There are kindergarten classes with 28 students and no aide. To give you an idea of what that does to a school, well, I do the best I can, but on a snow day when 8 kids are absent and there's 21 kids in my class, I can tell you the amount of attention that I can give 21 students is exorbitantly more than I can give 29. The workload for a teacher for 29 students is insane. So when you ask about increased class space and increased teachers, well, first of all, if the public doesn't vote in a bond to build anything, that capital construction needs to come out of the budget. Well, if we're only allowed to charge $1,000 and we're out of space and we need to build something, guess what? We lose an art teacher, and we lose the music program, and we use the speech pathologist or the occupational therapist that my special needs daughter needs. So when you consider these things, when you consider, and I believe the numbers between Hudson Point and the development at Stony Lodge, which shouldn't even be there to begin with because it's not zoned for it. And you consider all the extreme multiple development housing, I understand, including adding 2 or 3 houses on a single lot and 2 houses here and 2 houses there. You're talking about an extra 300 students, which directly impacts these developments.
I do appreciate your comments.
I don't think you take into account.
May I just finish this? I do appreciate your comments, and I believe that the planning board does have a responsibility to look at all factors that affect development. So, some of us do understand about the foundation aid. It would be good to have a succinct report with data, etc., so the planning board could read that, and we will ask the superintendent and the members of our school board to prepare such a report. That is helpful information, and I thank you for making these statements, and obviously we're very thankful that our superintendent could come and be with us tonight, and we do appreciate your comments, and all of these factors are taken into consideration. Ma'am, all of these factors are taken into consideration, environmental and school. At this point, though, we do have a public hearing, and I do want to respect the members of the public who are here to be heard on our application.
I do understand.
And if you provide us with a letter, we'd be more than happy to read it, okay?
I do understand that, and I would like to thank you for letting me speak, but I think also, and my last thing that I want to say, I think you would be remiss in doing your due diligence without not just asking the school board. I think you need to directly request that information and that data in order to make incredibly educated decisions.
Absolutely, that's what.
Over 700 rental units.
Ma'am, that's why we would have a communication with our school board, and we would work collaboratively with them. So I thank you for your comments. Thank you. At this point, do we have another member of the public who would like to speak on the Schneider application? Okay. At this point,
One more question. The shed, who's paying to have that shed removed? Is it Keith or Mr. Schneider?
I believe that it's Mr. Gordon.
That's correct.
okay, at this point, there needs to be modifications made to the resolution and the documents. So we'd like to continue the public hearing at this point.
The modifications are very minor, and we can go over them.
And do any of our members want to take a look at the property or stake it out? You're fine? Okay, so you believe that they're minor enough to, so, okay.
I would just add one other, just to capture Mr. Gordon's comments, because, it is an easement agreement between two private home, property owners.
Right.
It should be in a form that I can review, but he should also have an opportunity to,
Yes.
yes, review the form. So I think in that same paragraph where you talk about the form being acceptable to the planning board attorney, with respect to the Gordon easement, it has to be acceptable in a form to Mr. Gordon too, because he is burdening or benefiting from the easement agreement. So I think that would just be the one additional modification.
Okay. Mr. Stallman?
I don't want to be the arbiter of two.
David, at this point, can we continue the public hearing to August 3rd, and then we can have opportunity to approve the subdivision?
If I can say, with all due respect, I don't think there's any benefit to extending the public hearing. The public has spoken. This is a very benign situation. I think the comments that the town engineer, the town planner, and the town attorney have put forth
You know what, I tend to agree with you, and if there are no other comments from the public, then no one will come on August 3rd to mention. I feel that if we have a process where we approve the resolution, we don't close the public hearing until we approve the resolution, we should just stick to that. And
I mean, typically the resolution, the close of the hearing happens prior to the approval or at the same time as the approval of the resolution, correct, Dave? The close of the public hearing is typically first, and then at the same meeting, if it's appropriate, the resolution can be voted on, which I think is quite appropriate.
Can I ask you a question? Is that Gordon easement reflected on your plat?
It is.
Okay, so we're approving the plat with that easement reflected on it?
Yes.
So, Dave, do you have a problem with Mr. Gordon having approval over that easement?
Not at all. In fact, we spoke this evening, we've been speaking offline.
so you'll agree to Mr. Gordon having approval over this easement? Right, because that's how it's going to appear in the resolution.
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion from our board to approve the subdivision? Let's close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to close it?
It's in here.
Thank you. May I have a second? Aye. May I have a vote? Aye. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the resolution with all of the amendments as stated in our meeting? May I have a motion? Thank you. May I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, you can get the draft
Okay. Our next application, River Mall. This multifamily development, 40 Croton Dam Road, rezoned and site plan, DEIS scoping document. So Mr. Null, thank you for being here tonight. You're just going to do a brief presentation on what we've done? We've met a couple of times to go over the scoping document, et cetera, for the public.
Sure, I can do that.
Thank
if
you.
you'd like. Sure. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is William Null from Cutting Fader. I'm here tonight with Glenn Vetchmont, the principal of the applicant, Glenn. We've submitted to you a preliminary scope. You've reviewed the scope for the DEIS, the draft environmental impact statement that you adopted a determination to have us prepare. We've had public scoping and a lot of comments about it, and we've seen an annotated suggested revision to that scope. We've reviewed that, and we have a few comments on that, if I may, that I'd just like to make.
Before you do that, could I just go over the things that have been changed so far and get those out of the way?
Sure.
Okay. So, as Bill said, we had a scoping session. We produced a revised scope with double underlining and strikeout. We had a work session, and then we prepared another draft, which I got out last Friday on the 15th of July. You've got that in front of you, hopefully, presumably. And why don't I just go over the changes that have been made as a result of the discussion at the work session, and then we can get into the applicant's suggested modifications. So, on page 4, in terms of the description, this is in the project description of environmental characteristics of the site. We've added number 6, potential for contamination from any on-site hazardous waste. In the next item, we changed the word former to previous. That's the only change. The next change is with respect to stormwater management and surface water. I'm in the middle of page 7. A complete study will be conducted of surface, and we've added the words and subsurface water quality and quantity impacts on receiving wetlands, streams, ponds, etc., etc. On the following page, we've added the sentence, this is also regarding stormwater, the potential impact to groundwater on the site resulting from past activities and or from the demolition and construction associated with the project shall be addressed. The next change is on page 11, and we're talking about traffic counts here. We're specifying that they will be performed at an appropriate time of the year when schools are open and during appropriate weather conditions during the following time periods.
David, I think before that, sub D that's a minor change.
Sub D.
But you made reference to counties' patterns in Westchester 2025, no?
No, I didn't make any change there.
Sorry.
No. That's been the same way for a little while. Thanks. And then the counts, we've added the Saturday morning / afternoon time period between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And I know Bill's going to want to talk about that, but we did add that as a result of the work session comments. And let's see if there's anything else. On page 16, under the analysis of construction impacts, H was modified slightly to read potential impacts relating to the on-site underground fuel tanks, and then we added any on-site hazardous waste, and the previous instead of former disposal of hospital and or medical waste should be discussed. And those are the only changes that we made. Those were all of the changes that were suggested at the work session.
I thought I recall making a suggestion that the traffic analysis also include determining the amount of time that it takes to get through the Route 134 9A light from Hawks Avenue. as a function of time of day. And I think you said that that kind of an analysis was not typically part of a traffic study, but that it could be?
I think that can be calculated. Perhaps that got lost. I wasn't here that night.
Oh, okay.
Chase was.
Many of the residents have expressed concerns about the amount of time that it takes to get through that light. Many suggesting times of, 5 or more minutes and 3 cycles of the light to get through. It would be good to have some data to show what is the current condition.
So it's from where to where?
So this is where Route 134 meets 9A, if you're trying to get onto 9A from, let's say, the River Knolls property. So you're going east on that road, on 134, you hit the...
From where?
From, let's say, River Knolls, Croton Dam Road.
Okay.
On the road that they will be fronting.
Yeah, I just need the beginning point and the end.
Okay. So there are actually two beginning points. So two roads meet just before the Route 9A light, and it is the amount of time that it takes for the backups from both of those, from that intersection, that residents have expressed concerns about.
And the other side of 9A also,
So
coming
there-
into 9A, coming
The
from the
standard,
other
there's a
direction.
standard.
Oh, from 134 going west as well?
Yeah,
Well, that's a different consideration, though.
I think they're just
That's the wrong
asking
side of the
to
road.
add some of the times together.
But I think the intersections each have counts for how they function.
Yes.
And that data is present in the report.
And delays, yes,
So
each intersection.
That's already done as a typical step in any analysis of an intersection. That data will be in the report.
So
You would need to add multiple intersections together if you wanted to see how somebody progressed through a number of intersections. But the data is there, how each intersection functions and what the delay times are. That is the standard protocol for traffic engineering studies, subject to Mr. Stallman telling you something different.
that's
Okay,
correct.
so when the data comes back, I should be able to look at it and say, at, let's say, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, the current conditions suggest that it would take me 5 minutes to get onto 9A. I would be able to determine that from the data that you would be getting.
What you'd be able to figure out or see is during the peak hour, whatever the peak hour is calculated to be,
Okay.
how long it would take to get through every intersection in the analysis, depending upon which leg of the intersection you're at, which approach.
Okay, because we have 2 major developments that affect that particular intersection, and the intersection 50 feet west of that, which is where Hawks Avenue comes in.
And we've been given what intersections we need to analyze, and the way, just so that everybody understands, the way traffic impact studies are done is you pick the worst case scenario.
I understand.
And that's called the peak hour.
Mhm.
And you evaluate everything to try and address that peak hour and what the impacts are for that peak hour. So it's not as if you don't care about other times, but you focus on the worst case, figuring that if you can mitigate impacts in the worst case, then you're helping the rest of the time as well.
I understand that.
And for each approach, you would have a level of service, right, A through E. You would have a volume to capacity ratio, and you would have a delay in seconds.
Okay, it's the delay that I'm interested in knowing.
And that's why I'm saying, took the delay in
And then
seconds.
the anticipated
at
change in the
multiple
delay.
intersections, wherever you were going, you would be able to track
It's
the
additive.
amount of time. Now, I
Right.
wouldn't tell you necessarily like how fast you're going between those points. So it's really difficult to get an exact answer to what you're asking. How long would it take you to progress through one place to the other? But I think that the sensitivity analysis is how do each of these intersections function? What if any impact would we have to each of those intersections? And to the extent that we have an impact, how can we mitigate it? And those are the questions that I think are typically asked when evaluating developments.
Right.
I'd like to add a couple of things too. Glenn Betramont with the applicant. We submitted, predating the preparation of the EIS, we submitted to the Town Board and Planning Board back in November a full environmental impact statement and included
Environmental assessment form.
environmental assessment form. And it included a 200-page traffic study. So the data exists today. We will be updating it. It may change. Other aspects will be reviewed and added to, but it does exist today. And then relative to peak hour, a request has been made to do Saturday. And the problem with Saturday is that unlike Monday through Friday where people are going to work, which is really representing or returning from work, is representing the peak time that is going to stress an intersection the most. So on a Saturday morning, some people may sleep in, some people may go out for a jog, some people may go play tennis, but they're not commuting to work. So if you're trying to determine when an intersection is most stressed, it's not going to happen on Saturday morning.
Actually, the key issue is how does this project impact that intersection? And a residential project does not generate, as Glenn was saying, does not generate its most significant traffic on a Saturday morning. Of course, but that's why you analyze it that way. If we were a retail project, you would be looking at Saturdays, you'd be looking at different times. So it's not a question necessarily of what's the most difficult time for that intersection. The question is, what's the time that we're going to generate our peak traffic at given intersections? And that's what we're supposed to analyze, because we're supposed to be required to mitigate the impacts that we generate, not existing conditions. Although, obviously, for mitigating,
Existing conditions are your base.
they're not what we are required to mitigate.
I understand that, but
Right.
you're
We analyze it.
analyzing.
We analyze it on
Right,
existing
I was gonna say,
conditions.
this is our existing condition.
But what I was saying is that our obligation and what you're studying is the impact that this project would have on the intersections. And therefore, we analyze when we would generate our peak traffic affecting these intersections. So Saturday is not, with due respect, an appropriate study for us to do. It's not typically required to be done for a residential project.
That's correct.
That's fine. Does the applicant have an issue with doing the study?
Yes.
For Saturday?
Yes.
The applicant does not want to do this
We-
study?
Big up.
Thank you.
The applicant does not want to do the study on Saturday?
The study on Saturday is not to analyze impacts that we would have at a peak hour. So it's not,
Do it.
to me, it's not.
Do it.
Can I answer?
Please.
What we're all designing to is the worst condition for all of the interchanges, and Saturday morning will not show that. Saturday morning will show, again,
You don't know that.
will show that people are not commuting to, I don't live here, but I have been to the site.
But you don't know who we're. You don't have to deal with it on a daily
Please
basis.
address the board.
People work on
So
Saturday.
we all know, I've never seen a traffic analysis done with Saturday morning.
For
There's
residential.
no first time.
Because we already know that the Saturday morning analysis, can I speak, please? We all know that the Saturday morning condition will be much less than a peak condition during a work week. We know today that it'll be less. So it's just doing something that I know the result will be much less.
Yeah, okay, if you know the result would be much less, right? What would preclude you from wanting to do it at this point? If what you say is correct,
Okay.
right? If your statement is correct.
It's, my traffic consultants went out after school started back in September, and with discussion with the planning board as to when we should do it, and that's when we were told to do it. There was agreement on the dates. To do a specific Saturday analysis.
I don't understand that comment. There was your traffic consultant.
The protocols to, we had an agreement with everybody in terms of the.
With who?
With your traffic consultants.
I think we probably recommended at the time that a Saturday was not necessary, but I don't think you had any agreement with anyone on the planning board.
I think what Glenn was trying to focus on is, we would not be able to do that study until after September. With people being on vacation and everything else, it would. So you're asking us to do, with due respect, what's an irrelevant study based on standard protocol for traffic analysis. It will delay us by about 2 months in order to get you the information. And we're concerned about that because it's giving data that is not germane to an analysis of a residential project. And I think your consultants will back me up on it.
Do it out of respect for the people who will be impacted. Do it out of respect for us.
I don't want to belabor this,
We live here in Saturdays too.
but we believe this proposal is correct with respect to Saturday and also with respect to expanding the time periods. Besides the fact that it's going to take a little longer, I guess you would do the counts first week of September or something like that.
First or second week in September. I mean, first week in September, it often is not a full school week. It's just, you get put off for another 2 months.
There's no harm except for what Bill and Glenn are talking about. But you're looking for the worst case scenario, which would be included in the weekday morning and afternoon. But I'll just leave it right there.
Yeah, I'll add to it. It's not the cost, but there is a significant cost to do it. It's that I know sitting here today, having done many of these in the past, that the peak condition is not Saturday morning, it's not Sunday morning. It's Monday morning, people commuting, everybody getting into their car and going off to work. And school buses, picking up kids and going slowly down the street and backing up traffic. Those are the peak conditions, and that's what you're trying to design around, understand when an intersection is stressed. It's not happening on Saturday morning. As I stand here, I know the results are going to show something that the traffic is going to be de minimis relative to during the week in the morning. That's the issue.
Do any members of the planning board have any thoughts on this issue?
I have a suggestion. What I would suggest is our traffic consultants speak with your traffic consultants and give an opinion on it. And if they feel strongly that it will show something different from what I'm saying, we will do it.
No.
At this point,
We already know those facts.
we know the facts, right?
With all due respect, I've stated our point of view. It's now up to the planning board to determine what's
Right.
best and in everyone's best interest.
At this point, I do agree that, it's going to be de minimis, but I wonder if it just wouldn't help this process so that the public understands what's happening at that intersection, if it makes sense to take the time and the effort to do it. For you as well. I don't know, but maybe there's other thoughts on the planning board. Anyone else? I mean, that's authentically and genuinely my thought on it.
And I would add to that, I mean, I do think we can recirculate it to all of you. There's a 200-page traffic analysis that was done last fall, that was circulated to the town. So we will endeavor to recirculate that, and you can see, and I think that'll help guide you in terms of whether or not you think further analysis.
That doesn't have any information regarding Saturday, so how would it?
During some of the prior meetings, the community have expressed the concern about Saturdays and Sundays of the traffic. I know that the date that I went out to visit the site, I've actually been out there twice. On the few roads that I have been, had to wait for 1 or 2 exit street turns of the signal before I was able to cross over. So I think it's still important to have the Saturday in there.
Yeah. Thank you. Let it go. Let it go.
We'll go ahead and we'll do it, okay?
Thank you.
There are other issues that we'd like to address, but we think that the time periods for the studies during weekday hours should be limited to what's your standard peak hour, instead of extending it another half an hour to an hour. There is standard engineering protocol. There's a reason for it. It's well accepted nationwide. And by requiring us to expand that, you're adding time and money to doing the study again. It won't end up with any new data that's meaningful to an analysis.
Are you saying that you want to decrease the 7 to 7 p.m. on weekdays?
We had in the original.
Well, you had it just 6:30 or 6 o'clock or
It
what?
was
Right, 6 o'clock.
I drive that road at, I think, 7 o'clock p.m. at night.
We're talking about.
I was almost going to say to go to 7:30, but that's probably being
We're talking, sir,
not
we're
realistic.
talking about peak hour times, not
But
whether it's.
But stop it at 6 p.m. It's not logical.
I'm sorry, sir, but the question is, what is the greatest magnitude, not whether it's still seemingly a delay. The question is, what's the greatest magnitude? And there's a standard that's nationwide used by ITE and others on how you analyze these things, and we use that standard when we analyze those intersections. And I really think that expanding it, just with due respect, because people are asking for more information, is not the answer. There are engineering methods that are used by people who are experts in the field, and that generates the data that we've used regularly and consistently.
The way this is done is, counts are taken, traffic counts are taken during whatever time period is in the scope by 15-minute intervals. And then the 4 consecutive highest intervals, you know, the group of 4 consecutive that's highest becomes the peak hour. And all the work is done regarding that peak hour, that 4 consecutive 15-minute interval hour. So you're trying to find that peak hour within the time period that is being counted.
So it's a 2.5 hour or so period that we're looking at.
Right.
And we're not trying to narrow it so that we don't have that data, but you ultimately look at the worst case scenario, as I was saying before, that peak hour, and you design to mitigate the impacts of that worst time. And that's the methodology. We're not looking to keep information from the board, we're looking to use consistent methods. It's like if we were to use feet, or somebody wanted to measure it with something else. you use standards so that you can compare one project to another, and you can understand how things function. That this is the way that it's typically done. We're willing to add in Saturday at your request, even though with due respect, we disagree with it being added, but we understand that it's a serious concern, and we're looking to get you information. But we're not gonna get you any new information by expanding that time. We're just gonna spend more money, we're gonna take more time in getting it, and it's not gonna narrow it down to the peak hours that Mr. Stallman indicated before.
So I guess what you're saying is that
Please use the microphone.
if the peak hour is not gonna, today, what is the hours that they looked at? What are the hours that you looked at in your prior analysis?
I think it,
And I'd like to add something too. It's two and a half hours, but it builds. So as an example, traffic in the morning starts building at 6 or 6:30, and then you'll hit 7:30 or 8, and that's when your peak is, and then it dies off. So then to extend the traffic, to let's say 9 or 9:30, we already know that there's a trend downward from the peak. And nothing is gained by analyzing a lesser traffic volume. That's what we're saying.
I'd like to make a suggestion. Why don't you look in and see if DOT sometimes has historical counts at major intersections? If that data is available, maybe you can debunk the notion of going beyond the normal times.
Okay, let me just note, from the study that we submitted with the petition, it is what was forwarded on to you. It said traffic counts were conducted from 7 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 6 p.m. for all the studied intersections. So we're doing 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. And then peak hour volumes occur between 7:15 and 8:15 a.m. during the weekday morning and 4 to 6 p.m. during the weekday afternoon. So that's what's stated in the
You sure it's 4 to 6 and not a 1 hour period, Bill?
Well, I'm just reading what it says here. And you're right, the peak hour would typically be an hour. I'm just reading what it says.
I have a different concern. We have two major projects that impact the same intersection, and they're running basically in parallel time tracks. So if they were both to be approved, or in order to make a judgment about approvals, it would be good to know what the combined impact would be.
That is included in the traffic study. We've included their counts in our study.
Okay.
And it is a required methodology in any study we did that.
Great, thank you.
Any thoughts on the request to modify the document to allow for less hours?
You know, we spent a lot of time and money on the analysis last year, and it's here, and I think it behooves everybody to see it and read through the summary and understand before additional time is just suggested. It's a big 200-page analysis. This is not some small...
Is it available on the net?
Yes, it should be posted on the village's website. I believe we submitted it as part of the petition, so I believe it's been available.
Can we hear it?
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry. We submitted it to the town board in November. It should be on the website and available, and I believe it has been for several months.
Thank you. Last public hearing, we had asked.
So, you have the scope before you. There are two other items that I'd like to mention.
Could you go through the two other items?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you know, the proposed project that was submitted had a footprint it was based on 4 separate buildings. That was what was presented in the petition that was submitted to this board. We have, since that time, come before you and gone before the town board and shown what's been referred to as a compact or consolidated single building footprint. The intent in doing that was to reduce steep slope impacts and to reduce overall disturbance as well as impervious surface. So when we spoke to you about the scope, we were initially looking at analyzing both the proposed project and what we then labeled the preferred project. Given the level of detail that's required in providing this board and the public with information adequate for you to make a decision, we would respectfully request that we be allowed to fully evaluate the preferred project that's single footprint, because we think that that is actually something that both the town board and this board, and probably, I don't know if the public wants anything, but if is the right project to analyze. And let me just add to that. The traffic impacts that we've just been focusing on would be no different with one footprint versus the other. It's the same number of units, so we're not changing what would be analyzed there. We're not changing the analysis for sanitary sewer, stormwater. Stormwater may be by impervious surface, but we think it makes sense to do the detailed analysis in the environmental impact statement for the preferred project that's that single building versus 4 buildings, where we're not proposing to go forward with that anymore. So we provided to your consultants a markup of the scope that has a preamble as an executive summary to it that just discusses the fact that this proposed project that was initially submitted to the town board has since been modified to be a single building footprint, same 169 market rate units, 19 affordable units. And what we're asking is that the scope require us to consider the preferred project as the project and take away the preferred project as being simply an alternative project.
Right. Take it out of the alternative
Take it out of the
category.
alternative section.
Because that's not something that you would consider building.
The proposed project is not what we consider building because it ends up with a lot more steep slope impacts.
Okay, so that's off the table is what you're saying.
If that's acceptable to the planning board, if it's not acceptable to the planning board, we will go through analyzing both. But it seems to me that it'll make things more confusing overall in reviewing the document. What's the proposed project, what's the preferred project? And you really, the comparison isn't going to be.
I think that's fine because environmentally it would be a better project as well. Okay. And
that's the consensus. Then the only other thing is I think there was a reference in the materials that you had, maybe a carryover from an earlier document to DEP, complying with DEP details. I indicated crossing that out.
Right, and Dan, they're suggesting, and I think you're probably going to concur with this because we had a previous conversation weeks ago about it. The study in accordance with the Department of Environmental Protection, which is a New York City department, a complete phosphorus, nitrate, and ammonia loading study being prepared.
Right, that we felt that that wasn't necessary.
Because they're not in the New York City watershed.
Correct, and that they would just prepare a SWIP in conformance with the latest state general permit, and follow the stormwater design manual, and that's all very well spelled out in terms of what would need to be included in the stormwater management plan.
Right, we wanted, and that was one of the reasons that we wanted to do that preferred project, not for both of them, because SWIP is very detailed and there's no point in burdening anybody with going through that for a project that we don't want to proceed with.
Right.
So maybe I could read you briefly, it's a fairly brief insert that we...
While we're staying there, Well, we're right there.
Which is there?
There is, where is there? I don't know, but wherever you go, there you are, huh?
Probably been there before too, right?
It's getting late.
Just above the sentence regarding the New York City DEP,
What page?
page 8, I believe. You struck out the sentence, "This project will be required to conform to the new/proposed 100-year floodplain standards rather than those that will potentially become outdated in the near future." Do you want to weigh in on that, Dan?
I'm not sure what floodplain standards they're making reference to. And the only thing that's,
What we're making reference to.
right,
Is that sentence, should that sentence be in there at all?
well, I don't believe there's any FEMA floodplain mapped over there. Now, we certainly can make, there's been some issues raised in terms of the existing conveyances around the property. And we're certainly going to look at that and examine that, and that'll be part of the stormwater management plan to ensure that the downstream conveyances are capable of conveying the runoff from the site under a variety of conditions. But I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no FEMA mapping of any
Right.
kind on the
That's my
site.
understanding also.
Okay, so that sentence will come out. Okay,
And then the next sentence, which was what you read.
yes.
Right. Can I go back to page 2 just to read that inserts, because I've made reference to it about the preferred being replacing the project itself?
Sure, I've got some changes to that.
Okay.
Want me to read it with my
Sure.
changes?
Go
Okay. The layout of the proposed River Knoll project was originally was presented to the town board as 188 units, parentheses, 169 market rate rental units plus 19 affordable rental units, in paren, laid out in 4 low-rise buildings, referred to herein as the original proposed project, and then in quotes, the original proposed project. In response to comments from the planning board as lead agency regarding site disturbance, and in an effort to reduce steep slopes impacts, an alternative layout was presented to the town board and planning board that consolidated the 188 units, paren 169 market rate rental units plus 19 affordable rental units, and paren, into a single compact building referred herein as the compact MF2 development of 188 rental units, and that would be known as the preferred project. The examination of potential significant adverse impacts will focus on the preferred project, and the original proposed project will not be further evaluated. Accordingly, the preferred project will be fully evaluated as the principal project rather than being considered as an alternative in Chapter 5 alternatives as a compact MF2 development of 188 dwelling units. And I think we have to go back into the middle of the paragraph where it says referred to herein as the compact development, because there's going to be no mention whatsoever of that compact development. It's being struck.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
it's
I
being
mean,
struck
I
later
think
on.
that's gratuitous anyway. I think you can take that out completely without changing the reference.
Right.
But that was the concept of trying to clearly describe for people what it is that's being done and why that original 4-building project is not going to be further evaluated.
And then in the alternative section, we're eliminating the very first alternative, because the very first alternative, the compact development of the 188 dwelling units, is becoming the preferred project that's going to be fully analyzed in the DEIS.
So that's no longer an alternative.
Right.
Okay.
And that just shifts all the lettering, but doesn't make a substantive change otherwise. And then throughout the document, instead of project, it makes reference to preferred project, which was just defining what David read. I think it makes it clear that that's what we're using here.
Okay.
Okay? Those are our comments, and I appreciate you taking the time, letting me take the time to discuss them.
Okay. So we have 2 that have been resolved, 2 of your issues that have been resolved. The last issue is the traffic. Do any of the members of the board have a comment? We will have Saturday. We will have Saturday, correct?
Yes, well, yes, we
Mhm.
would study on Saturday, for Saturday
Okay.
traffic.
Okay. Any thoughts about modifying the time that's currently in the scoping document? And what would,
I still agree. Again, unless they want to say that at 7 PM at night, or 6:30 at night, at 7:30, 6:30 and 7, it's the same amount of traffic.
Yeah.
Fine, because I know that at 7 o'clock, I've seen that road. I mean, a bunch of us live there, again. He wants to just, if they want to state that at 7 o'clock at night, it's the same traffic as 6:30.
It's not. No, it's not. It's a commuting town.
I've seen that, I would reduce it from 7, from 7.
so you would say no?
Correct. Right. We did what we asked for, what the public has asked for.
Yeah.
I'm going with Saturday. We got Saturday, so we're talking about now the weekdays. We're talking about the weekdays.
It's a group decision. I think Saturday is a waste of time, but
Okay.
if the board wants to
But
comment,
the weekdays are asking to modify it.
I'm good with the weekdays as proposed. Saturday.
Can you use the mic, please?
Sure.
I'm open to focusing on rush hour, Monday through Friday. I think Saturday's a waste of time. I live here just like you do. I'm not saying it's not a bad intersection. I'm not saying that there isn't traffic on Saturday, but the peak scenario that we're looking for to study is absolutely not on Saturday. But it's a group decision, so if I'm overruled, I'm overruled.
Would you like us to modify the time in the scoping document? Would you like to abstain? What would you like to do, sir?
I'm torn on the issue because on the one hand, it would be nice to have that additional data so that the public can feel confident that that their concerns were fully analyzed. On the other hand, I tend to agree that it's the peak hour that really counts. And if it's going to cause a big delay and if it's going to cause a lot of extra money, I'm not sure. So maybe I'll abstain because I'm really undecided.
So, I guess I'm the vote at this point.
Is it one or the other?
I'm going to ask you that we keep it the way it is, okay? I believe that it's going to save you time in the end because you've done all of the work up front, and we have a document that we can all look at, and I believe this would be the best approach is to keep it the way it is today.
It's your
Okay?
decision, we respect your decision.
Thank you.
And I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
So will you be adopting the scope tonight?
Yes, I believe we can adopt the scope tonight. Do we have, yes, we can hear from the public.
This isn't a public hearing.
It's not a public.
What?
Excuse me?
Sure is. It's not noticed as a public hearing. This is a public hearing. Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is not on the agenda as a public hearing, I'm sorry. This is a
Yes,
public
it is.
hearing.
Yes, sir.
If you want to take comment, go ahead. You're running the meeting. but I'm
Yes,
just saying
yes,
it's not-
I understand.
It's not a public hearing.
Okay.
Yes.
No, it's not a public hearing, but at this point, if there are comments, okay. And ensure, because this is only on the scoping document.
Well,
This is only on the scoping document, so make sure your
I understand,
comments.
but we did make comments about the scoping documents last time, and they, according to these gentlemen, the traffic study was already done. So the comments really were incidental. Or
They're doing more traffic work, yes.
they don't need to do traffic studies. They don't need to put the high rise up. They don't need to worry about any of that stuff. because
Sir, may I just say something?
No, I'm
please?
sorry. I'm sorry. I sat here for 2 weeks listening about a process. And now the process, the sign says public hearing, and I'm giving you a public hearing based upon what I heard. What I heard tonight was, we don't need a traffic study, we don't need a big, tall
That's not what
corporate.
they're saying, that's not.
study.
Well, you don't need it. We don't need the high-rise either.
They're doing a traffic study.
I understand that, but we don't really need the high-rise, we don't need the increase in the schools. You know, I've lived in this community for over 40 years, I'm a retired school business administrator, and you have no idea what impact 200 families will have on that school. All you need is a couple of kids of special education, special needs, reading help, ESL, and the costs are gonna go through the ceiling. So the taxes don't mean anything. Taxes have gone up in this, my school taxes have gone up every single year. This is ridiculous. The band needs to save the money for the study. He needs to come up with a better plan than a high-rise.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Before you start speaking, I just want to be clear that this, right, this is a scoping document, right? And we're only going to be hearing comments about whether you agree, or if there's any items missing, all of the items about the scope. And it's not a comment about whether you're for or against the development, because that's not relevant at this moment, because we're just trying to come, okay.
Okay, thank you. Please do.
Marissa Caruso, 2 Redway Road, and I'm going back to page 11. I'm sorry, I get old. Traffic and transportation. So we're looking at, there's a G, Croton Dam Road and Grandview Avenue. I'm sorry, no, Croton Dam Road and Narragansett Avenue, I. That's one end of Narragansett Avenue. Narragansett Avenue also needs to be analyzed where it meets Grandview Avenue, which is the street that's directly across the street from Veterans Park. And a compromise for me as a citizen, instead of doing a traffic analysis on Saturday for the Route 9A 134 intersection, would be to have a traffic analysis at the park on a Saturday, because that's going to be the most impacted with the ball games and everything that goes on a Saturday. So Grandview Avenue is adjacent to the Stony Ledge property. It runs from Narragansett Avenue to Croton Dam Road. You're analyzing Narragansett Avenue where it meets Croton Dam Road, but Narragansett Avenue would also need to be analyzed where it meets Grandview Avenue, which is directly across the street from the entrance of Veterans Park.
Agreed.
And I would be more in favor of a traffic analysis on a Saturday at that intersection than I would at 9A and 134.
Because of the baseball.
Because of the baseball, soccer, hockey.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other members of the public?
Ronald Bramante, Narragansett. I live in Narragansett. The last time when we were talking about the scope, you were asking the public for their input and what to add. And then I just find out now they did the traffic study already. They don't want to redo it again.
We are updating our traffic
Okay.
study. That's being done.
All right. Also, in addition, I believe someone mentioned in there, the last time we were here, they wanted a study on effects on our property value of this high-rise coming up that's not added in the scope. The possible negative effects on our property if this project does proceed, that's not added in the scope. Study on crime, possible increase in crime, that was mentioned in, if you pull up the tapes, it was mentioned, it was never added in.
Possible increase in crime?
Yes.
Last meeting.
They're putting in rentals, they're not
Rentals, they don't care.
Right.
Noise.
They're renting.
These needs to be added in, and like I said.
Pay no taxes.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public?
Hi, my name is Bertha Seitz, and I live at 6 Cherry Hill Circle in a cul-de-sac that is less than 300 meters from the project. I have several concerns. I read the comprehensive plan update for Ossining, dated 9/30/15, and under the future development and redevelopment, I noted, and I quote, The goal of the comprehensive plan was to promote development which is consistent with the current scale and historic character of the community, and that it preserves residential neighborhoods. This is Osening's goal. It also states its number one objective is, quote, to limit the amount of intensity of land use and development to levels which minimize traffic congestion on area roadways. The proposed 188-unit development would be in stark opposition to the comprehensive plan that has been adopted by our town. This number of units would add about, I said 400, 300 more vehicles on Croton Dam Road daily. Egress from Cherry Hill Circle is now very difficult and dangerous. I ask you please to come to Cherry Hill Circle. I don't care what time of day you come. Try to get out of Cherry Hill Circle safely. I understand
Can I just
you're
mention,
obliged to
excuse
review
me,
all-
ma'am, can I just mention that
Yes.
the comment about the comprehensive plan was added to the scope? So that was incorporated here, that they have to study the comprehensive plan. So we did include that based on the last meeting. So I just
Okay,
wanted to let you
thank
know
you.
that's in there.
Thank you. I understand you're obliged to review all proposals and that there is a process. But if this proposal is contrary to the town's goals, then what is the point to continue these debates? In viewing one of the town board's meetings shown on cable TV, I was shocked.
Carefully.
I was-
Listen carefully.
I was shocked to hear an official state he, quote, doesn't visualize single-family homes on this property. That's a direct quote. How someone before us today could already have made a decision concerning this proposal is disconcerting. And I just added this. Since you have referred to this project now as compact MF2 development, has the board approved a change in the zoning already? As to spot zoning, the New York State Department of State, in its quote, zoning and the comprehensive plan revised 2015 on page 8, states, it is illegal for rezoning of a parcel of land to a use categorically different from the surrounding area, usually to benefit a single owner or a single development interest. I am not delusional that at some point this property will be developed and changed. I was living here when there was a proposal to put a wall box up the street. And instead, we have a beautiful community of single-family homes. I think if the planning board would bring to the table a proposal in keeping with the residential area in place now, it would be accepted more readily. Thank you.
I think something that needs to be added to the scope was directly quoted today by Ray Sanchez.
Your name and your
Ray
address?
Carucci, 47 First Avenue. He clearly stated that the schools are at capacity. What will 188 families bring children-wise? If each family has one kid, it's 188, okay? If it's two, you're talking about almost 400 kids. The schools cannot take that. You want to ruin the quality of the good schools we have in Ossining? That's the way you do
Could
it.
you just mention
The
that?
schools are in there, and it's a big part
Thank
of the
you.
scope.
Thank you for your comment. Does anyone else have any comments?
George Sykes, 6 Cherry Hill Circle. We're talking about traffic. We're talking about inconvenience. We're talking about 5 minutes waiting. These are all issues, and they're important issues, right? But I'm more concerned about a dangerous country road, all right? I would like you to ask in your study, the scope of your study, Tell me, well, let's find out how many accidents have occurred on Croton Dam Road between Cherry Hill Circle and Sassy Deli on the S-curve going downhill. It's very treacherous, there are accidents all the time. And tell me what road in Ossining where a house was destroyed by a runaway vehicle. And thank God the Flynn family was not in the house at the time, or we would have had an absolute massacre. Think about that. There's something wrong with that road. We cannot add hundreds of cars to that traffic pattern. We're asking for trouble. Let's not give it lip service. Please comprehensively talk to the police department, get the data, all right? Let's understand what we're talking about.
Accident data has been included in our scope. Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other members of the public? Okay, thank you. So at this point, we've all heard our additional comments. David, would you like to say something?
In terms of crime, they have to, we already have in there that they've got to consult with the police department and find out if the police department believes it has adequate manpower to take care of this project. So that's already in here.
Okay. Any other members of the board at this point? Okay. May I have a motion to accept the scoping document with the modifications that we've discussed at this meeting? May I have a second? May I have a vote? Aye. Thank you. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. We have 2 sets of minutes on our agenda.
Good night and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. We have our May 18th, 2016 meeting minutes. Have we all reviewed them? Yes. May I have a motion to accept them? May I have a second? All in favor? The June 15th, 2016 minutes. May I have a motion to accept? You can't make, were you not here June 15th? You can't make a motion. May I have someone who was there to make a motion? May I have a second? All in favor who were there? Aye. Okay, our next meeting will be August 3rd, 2016, if we have any applications at that point. August 17th, we have 2 members who will be away, and we don't want to take a risk that we have to cancel the meeting, if that makes sense to the members of our planning board. Yes, the regular meeting will be August 3rd, and there would be a cancellation of the August 17th, 2016 meeting. So no break in August at this point. Okay? No break. You know, some boards take a break in August,
I thought we're not having an August 17th meeting.
but August 3rd would be our regular meeting.
I see no break, like taking the whole month off.
We don't know at this point. If we don't have any items on the agenda, we will in fact have a break. Right. Right.
They won't be ready.
Yeah. Okay, friends. We can all do this all again, but not tomorrow, maybe August 3rd. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn our lovely meeting? May I have a second? All in favor?